Hey everybody, welcome to Tutorial Tuesdays with Tea Time Tales. It's Rebecca. Today we're going to be learning how to draw some torsos. We're going to do both male and female, and then we're going to learn how to understand the basic shapes underneath those forms, the bone structures, and the muscle structure over top. So grab your favorite hot drink and let's get into it. Alright you guys, so we're going to jump in with the female torso first. I've drawn a couple already so that I can kind of show you the breakdown of shapes that lays underneath all of this body form, the fat, the muscles, and all that. So we're going to start breaking it down with shapes simply first. I usually start with a line at the top, a line down the middle, and a line at the bottom. This top line is the shoulders, the spine is the middle line, and the bottom line is the hips. And from there, I can kind of start building the rest of my shapes. It's really easy to start with these three lines because it helps you to be able to kind of tell how your body is going to be sitting and curving. Usually they're never just perfectly straight. We can have our shoulders tilted, we could have our spine curved, maybe our hips are dipping down. So those first couple of lines are going to kind of help you start building the rest of your shapes. From here we have two shapes. We have a triangle from the top where our shoulder joints are going to sit. And then from where our femur connects to the hip, we're going to draw a triangle up to the center. And that is how we roughly figure out where our waist dip in is going to be, or curve, if you will. And then from there, you can draw where the legs are going to go, where the arms are going to go. Once we have our basic triangle shapes, we can just go ahead and erase all this convolution in the middle. And this gives us a guide to put the curves. Now from here, this is where we start getting into the bones. How the fat on the human body sits is determined by what bones and what muscles are underneath. So first we have a rib cage, and this is where we get kind of a curve out to accommodate the ribs and the lungs and the heart and everything under there. Then this section is where kind of all the squishy organs are, so all we really have to worry about is the spine down there. And then from here is where we get our pelvic bone, and that determines how curved the hips are going to be in this space and how dramatic any hip dips are going to be. So if we can kind of draw a pelvis shape, it doesn't have to be perfectly anatomically correct, but I do know that, you know, the top kind of flares out here, it dips down, and then it kind of comes out again. Something like that. Now this little area that dips in is what determines the hip dips, because this is where the femur connects. And it goes on like this, you know, as a femur bone does. So in order to determine how much of a hip dip, it depends on the person, depends on how much fat the person has, depends on, I believe there's like a little muscle in between that can, if it's thicker or thinner, can determine how pronounced the hip dips are. But everybody has kind of a natural dip to their hip. And following that bone structure, the fat is just gonna kind of come around. It's gonna be a little rounder on top, have a little divot in, where that femur connection is, and then round out to the thigh muscles. And of course we got the crotch area, and that comes up, and then we got our thighs that come in. You know, whether there's a thigh gap or not just depends on the person, depends on how far apart, how wide these femur hips are. So in this case, this person has a bit of a thigh gap, but we want to add some thickness to these thighs, you know, because they save lives. And then up here we got the breasts that live right above that rib cage, kind of sit on top, droop down a little bit. Drawing the breasts is pretty easy. We just take this teardrop shape and we just apply it to below the shoulder line. The shoulder line also doubles as a line where the collarbone sits. Boom, right there. So they're a little bit lower than the collarbone. We'll just draw this teardrop shape. And there you have it. There is space because the arms are kind of splayed out here. So breasts follow gravity. And when you open your arms, it opens up the rib cage here a little bit. And they'll kind of just fall downwards and to the side a little bit. They don't defy gravity, even though anime would like to lead us to believe they do. So there you have that view. Then from the side view here, it's a similar process, but slightly different. On the side view here, we still start with our top shoulder line, bottom spine line, or middle spine line, and bottom hip line. Instead of having two triangles that intersect to make an hourglass shape, we have a flat front and then this V that comes in from the back to give us that nice little back curve there. So we're going to start with our flat front, and you notice that I have a bit of a lean to this initial blind setup here, and that's because humans don't stand perfectly straight. Because if I drew a torso going perfectly straight, it would look pretty uncomfortable, pretty uptight, and you know, that would be great for maybe someone standing at attention, but when you are just standing normally, it's a little bit more relaxed, has a little bit more of a curve to it, a little bit more of a lean. And if you wanted to go even more extreme, perhaps someone has a pelvic tilt, you can have your lines and then have the spine curved in a little bit, so that can help you, give you a guideline for that pelvic tilt. You can see how that affects the posture there. So we just got our lines, got a basic shape, and then you match that kind of center intersection point with the back curve, and then it curves out and rounds into the bum. For the top here, notice how our shoulders are not just going off into oblivion this way. I actually have a cutoff, and that's because we are forming where the shoulder blades are going to sit. So I make this cutoff, and then we have our shoulder blades there. Then from here, same thing, we have the rib cage, but instead it tends to curve kind of like this, because we're looking at the side of the rib cage. And we have our spine down here, and then we have the side view of what the pelvis looks like. Got that pelvic bone here still, and that femur connection down here. We don't really see any hip dips from the side here, but we can give a little bit of shading in there. Then we also have to keep the organs in mind when we are forming fat around the body. Women have a uterus and it sits right about here, and generally they have a little pooch to accommodate that organ. As you can see underneath, we have this little pooch falling, and that's pretty typical. And then we have kind of this little bathing suit shape here that helps me identify where the thigh muscle starts. And we can also see that that shape follows where the top of our pelvic bone is. And then going out, we have the thigh muscle under, and then we have the glutes. Then we have the hamstrings. And then we'll just cut it off right there. For the breasts, it's the same thing, same teardrop shape, but instead of going like this, it has a flat back and teardrops out to the side. And that's how we have our breast shape here. And we've got the little bra band. Then, sitting on top of all of that, we have the shoulders. Go into the arms. And it all connects to the neck. Here on our front view, we have the neck, and the neck doesn't just go from here to the shoulders. There is a connecting muscle right there. I don't know what it's called, but there's a muscle there, and it kind of strings between where your shoulders are, and then your shoulders can come out from there. So that's kind of the underlying breakdown of our female torsos. So we're going to put that all together, and I'm going to draw a 3/4 view from scratch. Putting together what we just learned, now we're going to add in the spatial aspect to it. It's drawing a 3/4 view, you know, it's not just sitting flat one direction or the other. We have to kind of figure out where this torso is in space. So I'm going to start with my shoulder line and then my hip line. I'm going to add a bit of a curve to it. Going to add a curve to my spine. I'm imagining it within a kind of box-like space. Like you could draw a box around where this torso is sitting in this 3-dimensional space. So I'm imagining my spine curving backwards, leaning back into that space back here. From here, I like to add a circle for where my shoulder sockets kind of are, and where my hip sockets kind of are, just to kind of show me the 3D space. to understand it in my brain. And then I start going in. You know, we have the two triangles here, but they're a bit angled. So I'm keeping that shape in mind as I'm drawing. But not only do we have the front triangles, we also are dealing in 3D. So we have the back kind of muscle here that makes an appearance. And she's got a rounded back because she's leaning, so there's not going to be too much pinching in from that side. But there'll be more pinching in from this side. Now we can kind of see her taking shape. Now I can kind of draw my little bathing suit shape along those hip bones that we're keeping in mind. And she's got curves into the glutes and the thighs. Perhaps we'll make this other leg just kind of hanging out over here. We got those neck muscles up there that will curve into these shoulders that we have set up. Perhaps we'll make an arm come up. This arm can be down. So our shoulder muscle forms there. And then she's got her arm up. And there's going to be the arm that goes into the back. And there's this armpit right here, that kind of curve, and that goes into the pectoral muscle. And follow her back, little curve, and then we're going to add the breasts, a teardrop shape, again following gravity. So she's leaned forward. So there's going to be, they're going to hang out to the side a little bit more, and then this arm is up, so it's pulling in this direction. So this side is going to be higher. And we can kind of see it going in this angle, yet still following gravity. So I'll adjust that a little bit. Placement. See her collarbone following the pull of the shoulders. And that neck muscle is going to be scrunched a little bit since this arm is going up. And then this muscle is going to be more relaxed and follow that arm going down. And we have the other pectoral muscle leaning into this back arm. Have our ribs underneath there, and then a little tummy pooch to accommodate organs. And it goes right into that thigh muscle there. And then the belly button sits right about there. And there you have it. You know, she's a little bit broad on top, so I think I'm just gonna increase the size on the bottom a bit. Make it look a little bit more balanced. But honestly, you know, that's a body type too. And there we have it. We have successfully drawn a female torso. So for the men, it's a very similar idea, except there is a bit of a difference in the body structure, but it's the same starting with those two lines. This time we're going to make sure our top line is decently wider than our bottom line there. And instead of being two triangles, the male figure is more of just one trapezoid, starting wider at the top and tapering down to the bottom. And then on our side view here, very similar idea with a less pronounced back arch, but still exists. And then their hips tend to be pretty straight. Their pelvic bone is much smaller here. And that gap is a bit wider between the thighs. And it's kind of straight here on the hips. And then fans out a bit more into the thigh muscle. And depending on how muscular your person is, you can make the thighs bigger, smaller. Generally with drawing men, I tend to make things more angular to give off a more masculine energy. You have the neck, and they have wider necks, and they have more noticeable neck muscles leading into our shoulders over here. A bit more pronounced. And the upper part of the back is going to be larger than females. It's going to kind of jut out a bit more. And the rear is going to be less pronounced as well. And then just making that thigh muscle more jagged. And then we got a bit of space for the male anatomy there. Got some boxers on. And then their stomachs can have a base that's just straight. And then the pectorals can sit out just a tad. And we have this more angular slant here. And we can go ahead and add in that musculatory structure. Pec's gonna sit up starting in the armpit and then coming down at an angle, cutting into the chest a bit. You can have some lines here depending on how defined we want them to be. And for the guys, the nips sit down here at this kind of corner. And then we still have our rib cage under here, so we're going to keep that in mind. And come down the sides. And men have waist too, so it's just much less pronounced. But it does curve in slightly. And then goes straight with a small jut out towards the hips. And here's where we get this kind of muscle curve in towards the bottom here. And for the abs, honestly, you don't need to know exactly how to draw them super defined. We just need to kind of suggest that they're there and kind of trick the eye into believing it. And sometimes, you know, less is more. So we have this center line here and we have the belly button. And, you know, it's not straight. It's a little bit lumpy. And then we got the sides of the abs here, just kind of, you know, loosely defined in there. And honestly, that's pretty good, you know? And that's all you need for your line art. And then the pants usually sit right at or just below that curve in. And then of course you have your collarbone here, right along that top shoulder line. And they have an Adam's apple there if you wish to add in. Right there. And you know, there you go. That's it for the guys. Same idea for the 3/4 view. They're a little bit easier to draw in that like rectangular space. Maybe we'll do an arch this time. And you can kind of draw it. It's like a box. So we can kind of get that 3D idea. We have our shoulder socket here. I'll draw this arm going up. This guy going this way. And we can just start building. We've got the pec. Got our other pec on the side of the box here, coming from the armpit. And then we have our rib cage that juts out here and down into the stomach. Gonna bring the back around and it's arched, so we end up with a bit more of a curve. And then for hips, I kind of have the top of the hips here, but I need, the hips are actually going to come down a little further. Drew my box a bit short, but I think I want to have them kind of twist around this way. We have this center line here, and we have the belly button. Abs are more relaxed in this position because they're stretching, so you're not going to see those muscles nearly as defined as they were. And we can draw our thighs down here. And we have that line starting here. We got a bit of a twist going on, so we'll go ahead and just suggest that with a bit of a tangent here, kind of leading in to the form. Keeping angularness in mind. We got our neck. That's going to curve down into the form of a bit. And we're keeping in mind that this right shoulder here, we have the arm going down, so it's not going to be stretched quite as much. Pec will sit a little bit lower. Like so. And if we want to, we can draw some of those ribby side muscles there. Clean it up a little bit. And there we go. We have the male torso. And that's it, you guys. So, thanks for sticking with me to the end. If you got any questions or suggestions for future tutorials, go ahead and drop it in the comments below. If you want to see more of our tutorials, go ahead and check out our tutorials playlist on our channel. Until next time, keep drawing, and I'll see you later.